An off night in both the Stanley Cup Final and NBA Finals means we are still working. Paul Briscoe, Matt Berry with you this morning. While no games in these series were played yesterday, huge results still pending.
Yeah, we're now just playing the waiting game. In fact, that is the only game that Kevin Durant can actually play right now. Is that too soon? The Warriors flew to Oakland. Durant flew to New York, and the wait is for the results of the MRI. We know it's an Achilles injury. The question is, how bad is it? The Warriors say they expect to have some news today, and when they have it, we'll have it, and so too will you. In the meantime, from football to golf, the sports world continues to react.
It was sad. As athletes, we've all been there to that spot when you just know it, that something just went, and can't move, can't do much of anything, and you can see it on his face, how solemn his face went. I mean, he knows it. When things pop, you just know.
For anyone to question, his toughness or his willingness to be a good teammate, I'm sure many people were probably speculating, is he just trying to get the free agency because he has a big payday going? No, this guy had a rough injury, decided to come back and put his body on the line in a must-win game.
So we are expecting the results of the MRI at some point today. Woj is here now. What are you hearing in terms of what we should expect the severity of this injury is for KD?
The expectation is that this will be a torn Achilles tendon. The MRI will likely confirm that, and it'll confirm the severity of the injury, what kind of rehab Kevin Durant will be facing over the next several months, year.
Woj, when this injury goes down in the finals, everyone's sitting there thinking, oh no, because of the impact and the ripple effect this could have across the league. And Durant has to make a decision in his own right. He can opt in with the Warriors this summer, or he can become a free agent. How might this injury impact that decision?
It's still likely he will opt out of that contract, because if he wants to return to the Warriors, he can. By opting in, it's a $31.5 million salary next year. By opting out and doing another short deal, hypothetically, with the Warriors, that new deal starts at $38 million. But I think there's a sense around the league that he may still try to go get a long-term deal. I think that's especially important for a player with an Achilles injury whose return to the NBA may not be until he's 32 years old if he misses all of next year. And to go out into the marketplace, whether it's New York, whether it's the Clippers, whether it's staying in Golden State, and figuring that a team will still bank on the possibility that Durant will still return at a high level, but essentially he'd be a $38 million plus redshirt player next season for whichever team he signs with.
I have a hard time wrapping my head around that situation a little bit. This is a guy, though, who has averaged for his career 70 games a season. And as Woj just said, he's 30 right now. He'll turn 31 in September. If he misses all of next season, Kevin Durant won't be back on the court again until he's 32.
Have an MRI on his injured Achilles. League sources telling Adrian Wojnarowski and Ramona Shelburne that the Warriors believe the MRI will confirm a torn right Achilles tendon. Questions about whether he should have played in Game 5 on a strained calf continue as Warriors president Bob Myers took responsibility last night. A handful of notable players have suffered a torn Achilles in recent years, including KD's current teammate DeMarcus Cousins. Their average return time has been about 9 months, though that can certainly vary from player to player. If there's any player Durant should turn to, it would be Dominique Wilkins, who talked to Cousins after his injury. Neek averaged nearly 30 points per game the following season after tearing his Achilles, and Neek sent out a great tweet earlier today just saying if anybody can come back stronger, it would be Kevin Durant. Great to have Woj here with us. What is the latest in the test being done on this Achilles for KD?
Well, Kevin Durant left Toronto, flew to New York, where he's undergoing that MRI to essentially confirm what I think the organization and the attending physicians at the game last night believe, that he has torn his Achilles tendon. They've got to see the severity of this injury and then start him down the path of probably surgery and then a long rehab process.
Yeah, well, we'll see how this plays out as the injury now brings into deeper focus the options KD has this offseason. Now, he could opt in for $31.5 million for the final year of the deal he signed with the Warriors. That deadline is June 29th. The Warriors could give him $221 million over 5 years. He can get as much as $164 million over 4 years from another team if he becomes a free agent. And that Achilles injury is not insurable, meaning whoever signs him would not get any cap relief if he's out next year. Now, on Get Up this morning, our NBA insider Bobby Marks was asked if teams would consider giving KD the max after last night's devastating injury.
Talked to 3 teams, and I didn't even get the question out, Greeny. I said, if Kevin Durant was if you had cap space, would you go out and sign Kevin Durant, knowing that he will likely be out maybe the whole year? And the resounding answer was yes.
Wow. With what Bobby just said, when you look at the impact of this injury and the rest of free agency, as well as the trade market of Anthony Davis, what are you hearing?
Well, I think especially with KD, each team's going to judge that differently. There's no question there would still be max deals out. You'd essentially be paying almost $40 million for a red shirt next year. The player in free agency that I think this injury impacts the most is Kyrie Irving, because the thought had been and the conversation had been either Brooklyn or New York is a package deal. Both teams had two max salary slots to sign both of them, but will either the Knicks or the Nets want to take Kyrie Irving as a solo act? I think both organizations saw this ultimately as him bringing Durant or another big wing with him. I think it will be more dicey for Kyrie in free agency with KD essentially, being out next season and teams having to judge this differently.
Did it change anything for the Pelicans now as we're 9 days away from the draft with Anthony Davis?
They would like to get a deal done before well before next Thursday's draft. New Orleans is engaged with several teams right now. The Lakers remain aggressive in here to try to get a deal done.
Woj, thank you so much. Don't forget to catch Woj along with Jay Williams tonight, 8 p.m. on ESPN2 for our...
So do you really want to take a timeout up 6 with the NBA title 3 minutes away, or do you want to step on the gas right then? Here's the pivotal moment you may recall. 6 or so to go, Raptors down by 2, Kawhi downtown, bang! And then Kawhi Leonard hits a kind of tough shot, a little bit of a bank. Inside, he's got 5 straight points. Then he sizes up DeMarcus Cousins and says, boogie this, boogie me. 8 straight points. Then he drives for 10 consecutive points, all part of a 12-2 run when Coach Elvis Costello takes a timeout that he would have lost if he hadn't used it then. It was Elvis Costello.
We had 2 free ones that you lose under the 3-minute mark, and we just came across and just decided to give those guys a rest.
Okay, Elvis Costello now calls himself Nick Nurse. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson were the ones who benefited from the rest. The 3 from him, and then the 1 from Thompson. Warriors 106-105. Some reaction.
Nick Nurse is the reason the Raptors lost last night. And I have a lot of respect for Nick Nurse and the job that he's done. It's not an indictment against his coaching ability. It's just that last night, I found myself at the end of the game looking at him. With 3:05 left, decides to call a timeout and disrupts Kawhi Leonard and the offense.
I had no problem with the timeout. Kawhi looked gassed. He looked gassed. And I think that it was really, he was giving them a play out of a timeout. But I think anybody who thinks that timeout was bad, they don't know anything about basketball.
You can't call timeout right there. You get a Golden State Warriors a chance to go to the huddle with a championship pedigree. They regroup, then they're back feeling good about themselves. And then late in the game, you have the basketball. Kawhi's up top. That's when you need the timeout.
So it's unanimous on In Search of Lost Time outs. We go back to Oracle. Game 6 Thursday night. Raptors try to take their first title. Take 2, or the Warriors can set up arguably the greatest comeback in finals history. Our coverage starts, well, it's already started. Officially, it starts with NBA Countdown at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific on ABC and the ESPN app. And now the only person you have not heard from on this, someone with his own injury history anyway, Eldrick T. Woods.
Last night began with the unknown surrounding Kevin Durant's availability for one game and then ended with the unknown surrounding KD's availability for the future. In between, we were amazed, then shocked, then disappointed, and then speechless. This was supposed to be the summer of KD. Now the aftermath features questions no one seemed to consider 24 hours ago. The last time we saw Kevin Durant walk off the court for the final time in a season without a championship, he watched the Warriors celebrate, and the fallout changed the landscape of the NBA. It was the summer of 2016, and weeks after ending his run in Oklahoma City, the Warriors recruited KD to help rebuild their dynasty. Whether they were the Hampton Five or the death lineup, Durant's commitment to Golden State was felt everywhere, especially on the biggest stage when he won 2 Finals MVPs in his first 2 seasons in Oakland.
The back-to-back NBA Finals MVP, Kevin Durant.
Yet when some questioned his role in the offense in the first round of this postseason, KD didn't hold back on sending a message to everyone, including Clippers guard Patrick Beverley, with the series tied at 1.
I'm Kevin Durant. You know who I am. Y'all know who I am.
Durant responded by averaging 42 points in the next 4 games, including 50 in the series clincher. Then in round 2 against the Rockets, after averaging 45 minutes per game, this happened in Game 5.
Kevin Durant laces one through. And he's hurt. He is holding on to his right Achilles.
A calf strain brought up questions about a timetable on when Durant could return, while the Splash Brothers took over for the rest of the series and then swept the Blazers. It also brought up a sensitive topic with Durant's role in the dynasty.
Most definitely. I mean, it's been that way since I got here. It's the Warriors and KD, you know what I'm saying? And I understand that. And I felt like my teammates and the organization know exactly what I've done here on and off the court to become a part of this culture, to kind of stand my flag in this, in this coach and this organization.
But after KD's Achilles injury on Monday night in Game 5 of the NBA Finals, no one can question his impact on the Warriors for the last 3 years. Now, with uncertainty surrounding his health, the question becomes which team will commit to Kevin Durant this summer, with a free agency decision looming that could once again change the landscape of the league.
So when Kevin Durant went down last night, I thought of Dave Dravecky, and if that name doesn't mean anything to you, I'll explain it in a minute. But Michael Wilbon joins us now from Chicago. Who did you think of, and what did you think of at that moment?
Wow, Dave Dravecky. I'm old enough, Keith. We're about the same age. So that's a really tight one and a good one. You know what? I don't know that I thought of anybody. I just thought this is sort of a doom scenario. And relatively speaking, because Kevin Durant is not going to stop playing. He's going to stop playing for about a year. But when he went back down like that, it was almost the same motion that the first injury produced. And so now you're like, okay, what does this mean? I went immediately to what it means. What does it mean for the Knicks and the Nets? You know, and maybe the Clippers and teams that were counting on having a real shot at Kevin Durant. And what does it mean for the Warriors, who thought they might be losing him but might not lose him? Do you go to a new sort of medical team where you're going to be out for a year and rehab this rehabilitation under people you don't know and aren't intimately familiar with, taking care of you? So my mind immediately went to this is going to have a sort of a tidal wave effect on several teams and a big ripple throughout the NBA.
And it'll go on for months, as you suggest. And to explain, Dave Dravecky was the Giants pitcher, came back. They had removed a cancerous growth in his pitching arm, his left arm. He pitched a great game. They made a second start, and in the 6th inning, the humerus bone in the arm shattered, and he screamed in agony, and he never pitched again. Lost the
I was
arm.
at the great game start, Keith. I was at the good one. Didn't have to endure watching the second one.
And one of the great people in baseball, too. All right, and anyway, back to this. Who is more worried going into Game 6, do you think? Golden State because he is gone, or Toronto because even though he is gone, they could not beat them last night?
I think it's Golden State. Even though, Keith, I am not going to go and bet that the Warriors are going to lose 3 consecutive games, which would be, in this case, all 3 games in one playoff series. It's tough for me to see that, even though I've sat there and watched them lose, games 3 and 4. I think that the Warriors are still the team that, are facing elimination here. But, I think they still have to find a way now, knowing that Kevin Durant is not going to come back. And as someone pointed out after last night's game, those 11 points in 12 minutes that he produced, they needed every one of those 11 points to win that game by 1. So I think it's still the Warriors.
All right, last point. Lost in all the drama last night when the coach Nurse gets the Raptors on the court. Is he going to remind them that they do not have to take a shot the moment they get the ball.
I guess they don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And it's a weird. Keith, there was so many bizarre things that you could bring up as like secondary points that would be your primary point any other day, except the Kevin Durant injury obscured almost everything else, including the final score. But I mean, some of these shots, I mean, you look, when you're Toronto and you've got a lead, why do you wind up having three-point heaves when you've got the lead and some momentum and an advantage at home? But there are a lot of things unexplained last night. Best left just alone.
Sorry, we will. Sorry to call that timeout in the middle of your answer. Oh, that's another topic. PTI's Michael Wilbon. As always, my pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.